In 1948, during the war that accompanied the founding of the Israeli state, thousands of Palestinian refugees fled to neighboring countries. Some 20 years later, in 1967, the Israelis fought what they saw as a defensive war and occupied the West Bank of Jordan and the Gaza Strip. Now, 1.3 million Palestinians are refugees living under Israeli control. They are denied many human rights guaranteed to all people under international laws, laws that Israel herself has signed up to. Dheisheh is one of the refugee camps in Bethlehem, where 10,000 people suffer in cramped conditions, wanting to return to their homes, wanting jobs, wanting to lead full lives.
It's the holiest, the holy place in the world, but it's the worst now, the human rights. I can't leave, I can't walk, I can't talk even, I can't do anything I want, and it's in something normal. I can't go to Jerusalem, I can go outside my house without having my ID card, even here. In interview I have it, where I'll show it to you. Can't do anything without my ID card, and it's the simple thing what I can talk about. And without this ID card, I will be arrested. Just like that.
10,000 people travel from Bethlehem to Jerusalem every day to work. They have to pass a checkpoint where they must show their permits to enter the city. Normally, only married men with children get permits.
Did you try to get a permit?
We tried, but we are not listed.
You've no permit?
You can't get one unless you work for an official company.
You have to work somewhere official, but you can't get a permit.
So what are you going to do now?
We know how to walk around the checkpoint, but today we couldn't, and now we failed here.
Those without permits can risk getting caught at the checkpoint like those two. Or they walk round the checkpoint in full view of the soldiers, only 50 yards away.
First, if you go that way, past the checkpoint without a permit, you might get through, but they can pick you up. This way, they can't get you. A couple of days ago, they stopped someone there. They tied him up and abused him. But there's also danger passing this way. They can pick us up here and mistreat us.
It's not always easy. The soldiers can swoop at any time, stop people, make arrests. The men are sometimes terrorized, always frightened. It looks like a game, but these are middle-aged men going to work 5 days a week. Once they get to work, these men are exploited.
It is a kind of discrimination in wages between the Israeli and Palestinians who are doing the same jobs. As an example, the unskilled worker who work in the construction industry, he received a day around 120 Israeli shekels. But the same unskilled workers who is Israelis, he cannot accept to work the same job, but not less 400 to 500 shekels. Those who do not have permits have no rights at all. The Israeli employers exploit them 100%.
Khaled, your grandparents are from Zakaria. Have you been back?
The last time I was there just for picnic, let's say. It was before 12 years or 13 years. I was little young man. I don't remember very well, but I remember it's the most beautiful place I ever see. It's all trees, and it's a small village, but there's a Jewish from Iraq live there. It's my land. I know my last time was before 13 or maybe 15 years ago, but it's my right to go there. And we begin this interview in a question about the human rights. Where's the human rights? I'll back to it. To have just ID card to live, you haven't your land.
4 million Palestinians have lost the right to live in their homes. Here, a picnic has been organized by the old people to teach and enthuse their grandchildren.
Lifta, where your father and mother and grandfather and grandmother were born. We are not going there for fun. We're going as returnees to Lifta, our village, the village that we refuse to replace ever. We will not accept any alternative. We will not accept anyone negotiating away our rights over our village. We don't want talking, nor politics. We just want to return to Lifta. Where are we going to go back to? This is the Turkish emblem. Until now, we've kept the key to our houses. Since 1948 until now, I am 74 years old.
We were forced to leave at night while they were shooting at our heads. Honest to God, I had children. They left with me running for their lives. They were shooting from the hills, from here and there.
This is our village. Sooner or later, we will come back. It's our right. It is our human rights.
Many Palestinians rarely have mains water. This home in Yatta town last had water 64 days ago. They spend a third of their income on bad water that is dangerous to drink, whereas nearby settlements use water as if there was no shortage at all. In Bethlehem, Ida refugee camp is little better off.
We need a tank every week. It doesn't last more than 5 days. The price of a tank is 100 or 150 shekels. So when did you last get water from the mains? About 25 days ago. And how much does the water cost per month? It cost us 450 shekels, and my husband's income is only 1,500 a month.
So that's almost a third of our income on water.
So you know that the settlements have water enough to water the streets? Yes. Yes, I know. I know that the water doesn't cut off in the settlements for a single day. So they pour it on the plants, trees, and us human beings don't have enough to drink. Are you upset? Of course I'm upset. I'm angry. It's our basic right, water and air.
After the failure of the Camp David peace talks, the Palestinians in Jerusalem call a 2-hour strike. There is a heavy police presence. Outside the Damascus gate, there is a disturbance. It is not easy to see what's happening, though it appears to be kids objecting to the Palestinian man in the streets selling during the strike. Crisis intervention police move in numbers.
the terrorism. They do everything. Daily they do like this.
They're thieves. They take everything from us. They steal it. They're thieves, all of them.
This is the human rights. This is the human rights. They should go there. This is our land.
How will we fend for ourselves? How will we live? We need at least bread.
It's let the Intifada to return back, and it will be more strong than before. We should get our freedom, we should get our identity card, we should get our passport, we should get our country. We are not in animal zoo. They are crazy. They want just peace in hand, not more.
This is a martyr house. He was shot in his head, killed during Intifada. He was the first martyr in Dheisheh. He was shot in his head. Settlers shot him.
The Israeli government have built settlements to house 175,000 Israelis in the West Bank, behind barbed wire fences for their protection.
There's a very unequal world, and my children have to live in the danger of being shot at. Why are they shot at? It's not because they're settlers, it's only because they're Jews. If I tell you that we sat with the heads of the army and they warned us, no matter what Arafat is given, there's going to be violence. It's going to start with your communities. They're going to attack you. We didn't want barbed wire around us. We don't want to live in a ghetto in our country. This is not right. This is not a direction of peace. It's not you're going to give them land and they're going to be satisfied. First, they have to come to the decision. There's a place, and there is a place for both the Arabs and the Jews in this country. You know, they talk about Hebron. They talk about the cave of the patriarchs. Abraham had Ishmael, and he had Yitzchak. He had Isaac and Ishmael. We don't deny them the fact that Abraham is their father too. They have no right to deny us either.
We can live together. The world is very small today, and we must be together. We must thinking about good future. I need my state. I need Jerusalem. I don't need settlers. That's the true peace. What is the peace? To bring someone from outside my country, and because he's Jewish, just like that, to bring him and make him settlers and Syrians. Someday we will get it. By peace, by force, who knows? But I think we will get it.
15 kilometers from Bethlehem, the Palestinian village of Btselem is hemmed in by 2 Jewish settlements. The owners, who have been there for 3 generations, have been told that 2 of their fields are state land wanted for military purposes.
The Israeli government has told us that this is state land, that we are sitting on state land. We have a month, and this is a disgrace. If we were fighters, never mind. If we were killers, never mind. But we are peaceful people, and yet they take our land, saying this is state land, and they give it to the settlers.
If he plans to plant trees on land, he has to be able to prove that this land is his, like anywhere in the world.
Yeah. So you'd say that that land isn't his, and he doesn't have title deeds to that piece of land?
That's right.
And if he has, he hasn't shown them to you?
He has to bring them forward and show us.
And if he did?
If he did, then they'll be revised, and we'll be able to check, and if they are true deeds, then, of course, as in past issues, the order will be... won't be valid.
The family have deeds dated 1932, but they don't have much confidence that these documents will save their land, though the Israeli government says it will comply with the provisions of international law regarding property in the occupied territories.
Well, all right then, if this is a matter of justice, then let it be. But the problem is that they are not using justice. They are using force. Either agree or die. I mean, if they want to talk about rights, we have been here 150 years. This is the land they want to confiscate. We will not go. If they want to knock it down on top of us and kill us, they are welcome.
This orchard was taken from the family some years ago, violating the International Covenant on Civil and Political Rights. Ibrahim's son Mohammed explains.
This land belonged to us until 1982. In 1982, they announced a decision that it was needed for military purposes. They announced in the law courts that it was military land and we had no say in the matter. So they took the land, pulled out the trees and planted new trees in their place. And as you can see, they put this fence around it and made it part of the settlement.
In Israel, unlike in many other countries, everything is legal. All the human rights violations is legal. It's legal to detain administratively people for years. It's legal to demolish their houses. It's legal to deport them. It's legal to take their land. And until recently, it was legal to torture them. So I think this is what is very unique on human rights violations in Israel, that all the legal system is actually engaged in justifying all these human rights violations.
Mr. Abu Faiz is a Palestinian living in the West Bank. He's in court today because he rebuilt his house after the civil administration knocked it down. He is here in a criminal court, charged with rebuilding his house. His defense argues that he has a right to make a home for his family. We are allowed to film up until the military judge arrives. The judge didn't decide the case today.
Why was he not prepared to make a decision today?
He said he made a decision. Allegra got the decision last night at 5 o'clock in the evening.
That the decision was no?
That it wouldn't allow witnesses. Right. So she protested and said she's going to go to the Supreme Court appeal because she has a right. Her thing was you can't not allow witnesses because they're not relevant before you hear them.
I don't see why I should have to justify being on my land. Why should I have to justify that? This is something that doesn't happen anywhere in the whole world. As a human being, I must have the right to live somewhere. In the state of Israel or in Palestine or in America or in Europe, I have the right to live.
This committee announced him that he is not allowed to build over there because it is contrary to the authorized planning regime, and he still went on with the building, so his house was ruined, and then he built it again. So we only deal with the criminal aspect of this.
It's impossible for any Palestinian, without maybe some sort of connections, to get a permit. So from a 1941 plan, Abu Faiz's land is agricultural, and it is not zoned for residential, and therefore he cannot get a permit to build.
This goes the same for everyone in this area, in Israel, and in every civilized country. I mean, you cannot build wherever you want. This is the same law applied equally, both on settlers and on the local Palestinians. There's no difference between them.
Palestinians who live here own the land, and that's why they have to apply for permits to build a house on their land. Jewish settlers who come in here, Israeli citizens, they don't own the land. The land is confiscated by the state and then given to certain organizations who then hire contractors who build a huge neighborhood. So generally, Israeli citizens don't have to apply for house permits. Under the Fourth Geneva Convention, which is a law of occupation, the occupier is obligated to respect the rights of the civilian population and not to discriminate against them.
So you categorically tell us there's no difference between the law as applied to Palestinians and Israelis?
Absolutely.
Yeah? Absolutely?
Yeah.
Okay.
On the hillside opposite Abu Faiz's house, the Israelis are building a settlement. A helicopter buzzed his home within 5 minutes of his arrival, adding force to his complaint that he is being harassed by the civil administration. Badil, a Bethlehem charity, organised a trip taking children from the local refugee camps up to the border with the Lebanon to meet refugees living there. They hoped to meet at the fence, but an armoured truck barred the way a quarter of a mile from the border. The soldiers refused to let the party pass.
You have exactly 5 minutes to go. I suggest you take your group away to the bus before the police get involved.
They have to be content with waving flags at the people they came to see. Many are blood relatives they've never ever met.
Ask him if he wants peace. Ask him, but give him the right translation. Do you want to shoot? You want to make peace?
Listen.
Shake my hand.
Listen. He says no. Why? Because my land in Big
you can hear his answer. You
told him that.
Yeah, my land.
Ask him if he likes football. Ask him if he likes soccer. Tell him what to say.
He has a playground to play soccer in the camp. It's crowded.
Wait a moment.
It's a concentration camp, the same like the concentration camps in Europe.
Oh, come on.
We are
listen.
You are killing us in
Auschwitz? Have you been to Auschwitz?
Yes,
I am in Dheisheh camp, which is Auschwitz. Another one.
Have you been to Auschwitz?
It's another one. We know that you suffer a lot in Europe.
You've never been there.
Listen.
We know that you suffer a lot in Europe, but you are doing the same with us. According to the United Nations Resolution number 181, you took 56% of the land, and you want now to give us just 15% because you want all Jerusalem, you want the borders, you want the settlements, you want everything, and you want us to compromise.
Ask him. When he goes to camp and he plays soccer and he wins, his team wins, does he take the prize and give it to the other team, or does he take the prize for himself? Just ask him that.
Okay,
what would he do? What would he do if he was the winning team?
بتقول لك لو كنت أنت تلعب كرة قدم أنت في المخيم وفاز فريقك.
Why not? It's the situation. You win a war. It is so. You win a war, you don't give back everything. It's the exact same thing.
You don't feel with me because you claim that I didn't suffer in the camp. I'm suffering since 52 years.
I believe you suffered.
You don't. If you believe me, just forget me.
I'm not Israeli.
Are you afraid? Are you afraid?
You seem like a nice boy.
Yes, we invite you to visit.